Hey everybody, welcome to Liberty and EDC. I'm your host Daniel, and we're here with Kevin McCarty, who is running for District 2 Supervisor. How's it going, Kevin?
It's going great, thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, of course. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your background?
So yeah, my name's Kevin McCarty. As you said, I've lived in the Tahoe area for pretty much my entire life since I was 2 years old. Most of that on the Nevada side. My wife and I, we moved to El Dorado County about 6 years ago. When she first got pregnant, we knew we wanted to raise our kids somewhere rural, somewhere in the forest. We both grew up in the forest. It was very important to us. And so we came and we lived in Placerville for about 4 years. We've always had the dream of buying land, building our home, our family home, building a homestead, on our farm, teaching our girls how to garden, raise livestock. And so that's essentially what we've been doing since 2021. We bought some property out in Omo Ranch, Somerset area.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the process of developing that land, as I like to say, we had the excruciating pleasure of learning how this county government works.
Okay.
or doesn't work, to be more accurate, with respect. And my profession is in project management, regulatory compliance, construction project management. Mostly for heavily regulated industries, distributed energy, a lot of legal cannabis, people that need help in dealing with all the different agencies that you got to appease in the state of California to run a business. And so I've dealt with projects from the Bay Area to LA, most of them based in Sacramento, and I've just been absolutely shocked at the level of difficulty that I've encountered in just going through the permitting process. For relatively simple things. And so,
And that's in El Dorado County compared to other districts that
I thought maybe a little bit more of a red county, that it should be easier than what I'm used to, because I've got a high tolerance for shenanigans when it comes to local, ordinance and inspectors, and it's on a whole other level. So, started tuning into board meetings, getting involved with county government, seeing a lot of things that are encouraging, a lot of people that are very thoughtful in the county government who are helping to make things better, but also a lot of things that are disappointing. And at the board, I feel like we need leadership that actually understands the nuts and bolts of planning and building code, of land use, of ordinance, permits, inspections. And that's essentially where I figured, I feel like I can help. And I feel like because I can, I've got to at least throw my hat in the ring.
Yeah.
And that's essentially the nature of how I got into this.
Awesome. So you're running for District 2. So tell me, what is kind of the area for District 2? Like, how do people know if they're going to be in that district, that they could vote for you or not?
Yeah, it's a lot of people I talk to aren't quite sure. It's basically South County. So El Dorado Hills on the west side, south of Highway 50, and going up towards Grizzly Flat, like up the west slope before you start getting to the Tahoe area. Mm-hmm. And as far as north of Highway 50, mainly if you live in Cameron Park, you're in District 2. So most of the District 2 voters are all in Cameron Park, and then another 25% in El Dorado Hills, and the rest are Somerset, Fairplay, Grizzly Flats, and the rural parts.
Okay. So now tell me, you kind of touched on it a little bit already, your why for wanting to run for District 2 Supervisor, but go into a little more detail on that for me. Because it sounds like you're running a pretty busy and successful job already. Like, what makes you want to go into government?
Yeah, well, when you put it that way, I don't want to go into government, but I want to help solve the problem. And my daughters are only 3 and 5 years old, Isla and Aria, the reason that I do everything. And so it's going to be a while before they're actually adults and in the market for housing. But I see us going in a bad direction, and there's a lot of people everybody who I talk to in this county is kind of on the same page that it's extremely expensive to live here. I mean, my friends and my wife's friends, I mean, people are struggling. Man, you got to make a lot of money just to have any kind of comfortable living in this county, because specifically the cost of housing is so high. So on a very core level, it's making sure that my daughters, if they want to live in the county that they grew up in, that we're raising them in, that they grow up into a community where it's actually accessible to them. You know, we're living in a time when a third of millennials and Gen Z are living with their parents. You know, perhaps some of them, that's a deliberate choice, but for the vast majority, it's because that's the only feasible option for them. And this is something, you know, the Board of Supervisors doesn't control everything, right? We don't control foreign policy, we don't control inflation, but the supply and thus the cost of housing, that's something that the board absolutely has control over. And so that's something that, you know, for my family and for every family in the county, I believe that people have a right to accessible housing. You know, affordable housing has some connotations with people. They think it's all Section 8. But people, you know, we don't even have housing enough to supply the service workers for here on Main Street, because none of the people who are working those jobs can even afford to live here. So for me, that's like an existential problem for our county. And again, because I believe I can help, you know, I got to throw my hat in the ring, and I believe that I will as supervisor.
Now, for affordable housing, I know, like, when I hear that term, and I think for a lot of people too, they picture, you know, tall apartment buildings, you know, little shoe boxes, and, you know, rising crime, and just all these things that, you know, all these negative connotations, like you kind of hinted at there. How do you see that being different for El Dorado County?
And that's kind of a key question. And the way I see it, there's two sides of the coins that are extremely important, not just for the rural areas, but especially for Cameron Park and El Dorado Hills, is these large developments, high density developments, and that, you know, we deviate from the general plan, which was approved by the voters. So areas that are supposed to be rural, residential, they're saying, no, we're going to put in, you know, basically high density apartments, exactly like you're talking. And that's a problem. I think we need to pump the brakes on that a little bit. Let's take our time and make sure that if we're going to deviate from the general plan at all, that there's a good reason and the surrounding community and neighborhoods are totally sold on it. The solution that I'm seeing is, let's make it easier for the little guy. Let's make it easier for individual land and homeowners to build ADUs and secondary dwellings, and so they don't lose half their hair and basically lose their mind in the process. That you know, and the advantage of that, instead of large corporate developers and BlackRock and all the rest, instead of them deriving that rental income, all these individual home and landowners, they're going to be the beneficiaries of that. So, you know, there's things we can't control: the cost of lumber, the cost of steel. But the administrative cost and the regulatory, you know, the labyrinth that it takes to currently do these things, we can totally change that. We can make that much simpler so that the average homeowner can solve this problem at a grassroots level. And I think that's the path of least resistance. All it takes is thoughtful leadership who knows what they're doing and can push that forward.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen some stuff moving forward with like the small houses happening in Grizzly Flats. I think that's getting pushed forward right now. Also, you know, interesting enough, we have a court case from El Dorado County going up to the Supreme Court for, you know, regulatory fees from our county. So that's, you know, definitely some interesting things that are, you know, starting to happen in our county along those lines.
Yeah, actually, I was, and, you know, credit where it's due, Supervisor Turnbull for pushing forward the Title 25, the owner build ordinance for Grizzly Flats. That's 100% a positive development. The only constructive criticism I have is that it's only for the footprint of the Calder fire. So the county, you know, to be real, they only care in this case about making it easier to build a home and to simplify the ordinance for you once you've lost your generational family home in a wildfire, and not a minute sooner. I believe we should expand Title 25 to all unincorporated areas of the county, just like the model was Butte County, where that's how theirs is. If you're outside the incorporated areas, where of course there's special standards, people are closer together, you absolutely can mill your own lumber, you can build your own home. And you may not be able to get insurance for it. You may not be able to get a loan. But if you're willing to put in the sweat equity and buy a couple acres and do it yourself, I mean, that's kind of, I believe that every rural resident should have that right. And
that, I mean, that just sounds like El Dorado County to me too.
Like that's to me, absolutely. That's, and my realm and my friends who are, you know, crunchy as crunchy can be, you know, basically everybody's willing to mill their own lumber and build it themselves. We just got to have a building code that lets them do that. And you had mentioned, what was the other one? Was
the Supreme Court case.
The Supreme Court case, right? The traffic impact management fees. That's critical, right? We obviously need to have fees to deal with our needs for roadways, both maintenance and construction. But when we have it where Mr. Sheets, who's just trying to put in, I believe, a single wide manufactured home, and they say that'll be $23,000 just for the TIM fees, right? Not even including the other permit fees. And he's like, well, how am I impacting the roadways that much? And that's a perfect question. They said, well, that's the price, take it or leave it. And meanwhile, for some of these large developers, especially if it's an age-restricted development, like one recently announced UC Davis, elderly senior citizen development, they pay way less in terms of fees per unit than Mr. Sheets and the individual little guys. So we've got a system that's completely unbalanced, and we need to flip that. Let's put the fair share on the bigger guys with hundreds of millions of dollars in funding, and let's make it easier for the little guy to, build a home and put a roof over their head.
Yeah. Are there any other specific issues that you're running on?
Housing is number one. I would say number two is wildfire resilience, and specifically also the cost and affordability of fire insurance, which is a brutal impact on people. I mean, both rural and non-rural. I mean, I talk to a lot of people. They're like, I'm in a suburban development, and why am I paying this much for fire insurance? Like, if the fire gets here, we've got real big problems because it's already burned through whole communities. And that's a valid question. We have the FAIR plan put out by the state, which is a good option, but it's not meant to be used to the level that it is. And, I was just listening to some people from Diamond Springs Fire Department, and they said they got dropped from their coverage. Like, if the fire department is losing their fire insurance, then we've got a real problem. Yeah. And I think that there's solutions that we need to explore and be creative as far as self-insurance, the way that, even beyond FAIR Plan, California has its earthquake authority. Florida has its hurricane citizens insurance, I believe. And so when private insurers flee, then the state comes in. It's not backed by the government budget. It's a private instrument through private insurers, but it sets the minimum standards for coverage, and it defines certain aspects of it. So I think at very least right now this county's trying to impose a vegetation management defensible space ordinance, which I'm the treasurer of the Elmo Ranch Fire Safe Council. I'm all about community measures to mitigate wildfire. But if people are going to go through that effort, let's make sure that they automatically get a discount on their fire insurance. And we can do that. We just need, again, thoughtful leadership. Perhaps it's not just a El Dorado thing. Let's partner with all the other rural counties of the Sierra Nevada. Let's make it an instrument that works for all of them. And I think that's the kind of leadership that at least, I'm prepared to undertake.
Very cool. Anything else that you wanted to hit on?
Smart development, again, is that we, unless we just want Cameron Park to continue to be strip malls, and we want El Dorado Hills to be, Amazon and, large UC Davis developments, high density stuff to the point where if you get on Highway 50, it's going to be like getting on Highway 80, then, let's just go with business as usual. But ultimately, if we want to go in a different direction, have more thoughtful path in terms of the way we're actually building our county and our communities, I would, humbly ask that, people consider some fresher leadership, and that's again why I'm here.
Awesome. So can you tell everyone at home when and where they can vote for you?
So the primary election is on March 5th. Ballots will be sent out on February 6th, and I encourage everybody, if they'd like to learn more, www.McCarty4supervisor.com. I'm available for individual contact. And I'd love to hear from every District 2 resident, even people who aren't in District 2. This is a supervisor makes decisions for the entire county. They represent, their district. So specifically, I want to talk to people in District 2, but, the decisions that are being made and the housing crisis, it affects us all. So that's absolutely, I would love to talk with anybody who's willing to talk with me.
Awesome. Oh, that is one question I forgot. I like to ask all the candidates. Tell me, what does a District 2 supervisor do?
That's a great question, and there are a lot of different characteristics. Managing the county budget, leading in terms of decisions, as far as executive decisions, When this or that contract is up for renewal or review, communicating with the voters, right? It's the primary policy-making body of the county. So, when it's not a ceremonial role, it's not something that we should put somebody in just because they're well known or they've, been in the county for a long, long time. It's not something that anybody earns just by, virtue of being around. This is a very important role where you're making decisions, just like the city council of an incorporated city. And so I think it's very important to have intelligent leadership that are making decisions based off of data and all of the community input. So there's a lot of aspects that go into it, but it's the again the prime executive and policy making body of the county.
Awesome, that's great, Kevin. So thank you for coming in. We really appreciate it. And this has been Liberty in EDC. And you can watch us on Foothill 7 TV, and you can find us on YouTube, all the social medias and all that good stuff. And we'll catch you guys next time.
All right.